Good morning. It's New Thought Talk. I am your host, the Reverend Steve Walling, the Senior Minister of the Spiritual Awareness Center. We are now located in beautiful Fresno, California in the Central Valley. And it's a great day. It's an absolutely beautiful day outside today. And we've entered into that autumn time of the year, and some of my most favorite weather days are upon us. So having said that, welcome to the show today. I want to talk about something today. I had the opportunity, if you will, to spend some time yesterday with a group of Christian people celebrating the end of life of an individual. And during this process, of course, as you can imagine, the conversation of God came up, and all the stuff that goes along with that. And I began to think, as I was thinking about the show today, I'd like to talk about this thing that we call God, and how our defining it, our understanding of what God is and means to us each individually, how that affects the way we personally interact with life. And so I'm going to start there, and I want to give a little bit of insight into this. And Ernest Holmes said when we were beginning to look at this understanding of God. Let me see if I can find the page here. He says, man's idea of deity, God, evolves with his other ideas. After a belief in many gods, he comes to realize that there is one God and one spirit back of all manifestation. One spirit or self-conscious life, acting through the medium of one mind or one subjective law, producing many manifestations. Multiplicity coming from unity without breaking up the unity of the whole. Now, if that sounds like a definition of God unlike what you've understood in the past, we'll break that down in the show today. We'll take a look at it. You know, there are so many of us that have come to this understanding of God in the old understanding way, if you will, and I'm going to use the phrase the tribal God. And I hope that doesn't bother you to have me refer to it that way. But the God that we have come to know and love in Western culture and a good part of the world actually was an understanding of this divine presence that came out of a tribal realization. And so God really was a God of the tribe. And then as the concept grew and as the philosophy spread, this tribal God became the one ultimate God of all humanity. But behind that, somewhere back in the distant past, there was an understanding of something greater than. And it wasn't necessarily called God, and it wasn't given a physical, anthropomorphic definition, if you will, but it was more of a principle. And behind all of our concept of God throughout history is this idea of this principle that has for some time is become more prominent, and sometimes it's become less prominent. But as we move into today, I want to think about, and I'd like you to think about today, how we define God and what that means to us as individuals. Because as we define God, we really do define our reality also. You know, there are many people that still hold on to the understanding of a God that is kind of a tribal God, if you will. This is an individual being that is anthropomorphic. It has human characteristics. He, and usually it's a he, lives in a special place, and he seeks out vengeance upon those that displease him, and he gives pleasure to those that please him. And we all, according to the teachings, have certain guidelines, laws, if you will, that we must follow to stay in God's good pleasure. And if we fail to do so, there are serious ramifications as such. So having that as the understanding that many people come to when they're looking at this, you see what happens when you look at the world today. If we are a believing people in the divine presence, and we believe that our understanding of God, if our God is the God that pushes us forward, and we must proclaim the good news, if you will, and we must bring all people under this one belief system, it begins to create discord in the world. And throughout history, we've seen that discord as one group versus another has tended to push its definition of God upon humanity as a whole. And today we're seeing that play out again, and to a rather less than positive way, if you will. Imagine that, but yet at the same time we talk about God as this loving being, this ever-present source of all good. And how do we bring these two concepts together? And it was not just this individual, but it was this individual and he shared something that, like I say, wasn't necessarily unique to him, but it was unique to the world at that time. And this is this individual that we call the great teacher. We call him Jesus the Christ. And he brought an understanding of a God that really, in many ways, in the place and time that he brought it, was a very radical teaching. Because God at that time was the God of the Old Testament. This was, again, that tribal, that wrathful, vengeful God who sought out retribution and demanded punishment and vengeance. But that's not the God that Jesus brought to the world. That's not the God that Jesus taught in the world. When Jesus taught this new concept of God, if you will, this radical concept of God, he taught a God that was a loving being, a God that didn't demand retribution, didn't demand vengeance, but a God that required that we love God with all that we are, and that we love our neighbor as we love ourselves. And when Jesus shared this with the world, what he was sharing, and he said, on these two commands let hang all the laws and the prophets. And what he was saying is all the teachings, all the laws, all the prophets that have been, all the teaching of the prophets hang on these two things. And when you begin to understand and you put those concepts into a view of life, if you will, if we love God with all that we are, and if we love our neighbors, we love ourselves, the idea of discord in the world tends to disappear, doesn't it? When you see God as your good, when you see God as this ever-presence of love that provides all good in life, when you see your neighbor in the same light that you see yourself, and that this God is this loving light, does that not change how we understand the world? And it lays for a whole different foundation, if you will, what it means and what God means. And so I'm going to cut away to the first break at this point in time, and when we come back, we'll go into this. So we'll see you then.
Christy Majors is your local real estate connection. With a solid, hardworking team, traditional listings, short sales, probate listings, and foreclosures are treated in a personal and caring way and closed in a timely fashion. Since 2009, Team Majors has closed more than $75 million worth of homes all over California. Reliable and trustworthy, Christy and her team will go the extra mile for every client, whether selling or buying a home. So give Team Majors a call at 559-464-5606 or visit teammajors.com.
Sal Contreras of JC's Lawn Service is the go-to guy for all your lawn care and landscaping needs. Just call Sal at 559-978-7730.
CentralValleyTalk.com.
Welcome back, New Thought Talk. I'm your host, Reverend Steve Walling. Today we're talking about our understanding, our definition, if you will, of what God is in our lives and how this affects our life understanding. And I was sharing in the first segment this understanding of God as the God that has been historically taught, which was a tribal God, a vengeful God, a God that had rules and regulations that and it was always, or generally always a he, his minions, if you will, that fell far short of his goodness must live up to a certain level in order to attain a certain presence of or consideration of goodness in his eyes. This is the God that needed to have some kind of sacrifice on some level. And history, again, is replete with the various descriptions of sacrifice, blood sacrifice, food sacrifice, all sorts of various sacrifices to this God. And again, this God I'm not talking about a specific God of a specific religion, because this really was kind of a pantheistic understanding of God in the time of history, where people saw this God as demanding and had to be placated. So ultimately, we come up to a time where we have a God now that has required the ultimate sacrifice, and the ultimate sacrifice was provided. And from that, then we have this whole religion that has sprang up in the Western world and that has been prominent and so powerful in the creation of the world in the West that we know and understand today. And there's been a lot of good teaching that's come out of that. But there's been a lot of mythology that's been tied to it too. And for some people, as I speak these words, it may be a little bit, may startle you a little bit. But as we look at this God, we can see how the mythology has been woven into the understanding of the world that this God has kind of inhabited today. So the basic premise of what we call Western Judeo-Christian understanding, Christianity today, comes from a combination of something called a religion called Zoroastrianism, and it obviously comes from Judaism, and it comes from a Hellenistic understanding. And these three philosophies combined, along with the teaching of this man called Jesus, to form the Christian religion. And a lot of this was philosophies that were added after Jesus had made his transition and moved on. And they were teachings that men added to what he taught, not necessarily things that he taught. But this religion grew up around it. So you have people that have, for many, many years, tied themselves to that. And that's not good or bad. I'm not making a judgment call. I'm just describing what has happened historically. But as humanity has evolved, we have seen also our understanding and our definition of the divine evolve. And in modern times today, when science is on so many levels confirming a greater understanding of this divinity that we call God, and our understanding and our ability to take this understanding, these definitions, and actually apply them into our life to create a different life has become powerful. As I was saying at the beginning of the show, I spent some time yesterday with some really wonderful people, but they have a very strong belief that there is only one path to God. There's only one way to God, and if you fail to follow this one path, then you fail for eternity. And that's not the God that this fellow Jesus taught. Jesus didn't teach a God of eternal damnation. He taught a God of love. He said that this God is a God of life, not a God of death. He said that this God exists within each of us, and he also said that the kingdom of heaven is to be found within us. These are liberating thoughts. These are freeing concepts and words. And how did this come about? I mean, where did this go? Why aren't we seeing this in the prominent understanding of the world today? And that's a question that historians are working on answering, but it's a question that we don't really need to address specifically. What we need to address is our relation with this concept and this understanding of this divine presence. If God is everywhere, we'll just take that supposition, and you won't find too many people that will argue that point with you. God is everywhere present. If God is everywhere present, then that means, obviously, that there's no place where God is not. And if there's no place where God is not, where you sit today, God is there in some aspect of it. Obviously, not all of God is in any one place because God is infinite. But in that infinite, we have finiteness, and we individualize that as our beingness. And one of the things we like to say in religious science is that there is just this one mind, and this mind is the mind of God, but it's also our mind. Well, what does that mean? It means we have to redefine our understanding of the divine presence. We're not talking about a God that's out there somewhere. We're talking about a God that's everywhere present. And if we're talking about a God everywhere present, what does that mean for us as individual beings with our individual consciousness and our individual ability to have and to make choice? God is consciousness. God is mind. We are consciousness and we are mind. So, in a sense, on a smaller level, we replicate what God is on the larger level. And God is a creative being. And we are also creative beings. And I heard something today as I was driving in that I wanted to share with you, because I think it's a very powerful definition of that which we call spirit or spirituality. And oftentimes people think of spirituality as this sense of piety, if you will, this sense of going around, with your head in a spiritual cloud. But what I heard today, and what I really I like is a really good definition of spirituality is the ability to be creative. I want you to think about that. Spirituality is the ability to be creative. Well, what do we mean when we're talking about being creative? Well, we're talking about that which God does. God is the creative principle of everything. In the beginning there was God and nothing else, and from God all things happen, all things come. God is the formless which contains many forms. God is the creative principle. We are in the likeness and the image of God, therefore we are also the creative principle manifest as us. So what does that mean in our lives? It means that our life is not tied to a singular path. It means that our life is not restricted or held in bondage by something outside of ourselves. What it means is that we are the power and the presence in our life, in our creative ability. That really what we do is we express God as us. We express God as us. And our purpose in this life is to express God as best we can. And those of us that express God in the most abundant way experience God most abundantly in their life. So therefore, when we think about the creative principle, we're also thinking about spirituality. So the most spiritual individual, or the most spiritual being, is the most creative being, and ultimately that would be God itself being the most creative beingness, principle, if you will, of all. And that lays the groundwork for us in our lives. Now what happens is we come into this life and we hear many stories, we learn many things, we may pick up many beliefs, and those beliefs and stories and things that we've grown up with have tied us to, a certain format of life, if you will. That our life is tied to what we believe life is to be. But, everything you believe today, you did not believe at one time. Well, think about it. Every single thing that you believe today, at one time, you did not believe that. You had to learn your beliefs. And what you learned, you can unlearn. And why does this become important? It becomes important because as our understanding of God grows, as our understanding of principle grows, our beliefs change and our beliefs grow, and our beliefs grow in such a way that they allow for us to accept a greater good in our lives, a greater deal of abundance in our lives. And when we begin to come to this understanding, one of the first things we do is we ask, well, how do we know where we're at, and how do we know where we can be? And And we run this whole series of questions. And the simplest answer is to stop and look around you. Take a look at your life, just almost as if you are standing in front of a mirror. Stop and look at what your life, the panorama of your life, what is it showing you right now? Is your life a life that is filled with happiness? Is your life a life that is filled with joy and peace and harmony? Is your life a life that's filled with good health and filled with financial abundance? If it is, then you are obviously aligning yourself with principle, and you are allowing this divine principle to express maximally or to a great degree through your life. But if your life is something less than that, if your life is a life where you're struggling financially, if your life is a life where you're struggling health-wise or in relationship or in your ability to self-express, then you're not expressing the divine principle that is you at the level that you can. And everything that you need to express your life at that level is available to you, in you, as you, and it will demonstrate through you as you begin to bring yourself in alignment. But it starts not out there. It starts in here and in here. And that's when we begin our journey. Those are where our first steps are taken. They're taken in mind, and they're taken in our heart, in our beingness. And so we go back to, and what I started the show with today, is our understanding of God. If we see God as the guy, if we see God as the purveyor of all things bad and vengeance and judgmental and stuff like that, then that's where we're tied. But we can begin to take our beliefs and move beyond that. We can begin to believe and see that there is a God that's infinite, and that a God is a God that's everywhere present, a God that's all power, and a God that's all knowing and all knowledge, and that God is a potential of all goodness. And so the next step is opening ourselves up to that goodness. And we do that by declaring that we have a greater good and a greater God in our life than what we have been experiencing. And we can do this in many ways. We can start with affirmations, we can start with study, we can start with meditation, but what we ultimately have to do is we have to start with changing our definition of God. So I'm going to get this squared away in a minute, and we'll come back and I'll see you then. We'll talk about our definition of God.
Custom Painting is here for you. We can help you achieve that custom look with premium paints and custom texture with quality workmanship at reasonable prices. Discounts for veterans and senior citizens. Prompt, reliable, professional, Elite Custom Painting delivers superior customer service, specializing in residential interior and exterior painting, cabinet repainting, wallpaper removal, and retexturing. Call today for your free estimate at 559-970-8154.
Realtor Letty Pinjatori is a broker associate with Keller Williams, and she is also a voiceover artist. Contact Letty at 559-281-4568.
I was an addict, an opiate addict.
The 3 years clean in October.
I was renewed at the Fresno Rescue Mission. My mom, who does a lot of cooking, has been part of the rescue mission, has been willing to help teach people to make jams and jellies and other foods.
The Fresno Rescue Mission.
And I believe that downtown Fresno needs a renewal as well. Tree of Life Cafe represents new, healthy growth in downtown Fresno. I've seen men and women go through rehab programs. They want to start a new life. And yet when they get out on the street, they find it very difficult to get a job. Nobody will give them a chance. That's what this cafe is designed to do.
You will be like family to us. We will serve you our home-cooked food made with farm-fresh produce that comes from farmers right here in our valley.
We love downtown Fresno.
Pasture-grazed, delicious, nutrient-dense, 100% organic raw milk from Organic Pastures. Visit organicpastures.com or call 1-877-RAW-MILK.
Central Fifth Quarter, a restaurant and sports bar in Visalia. 24 of your favorite beers on tap and a full bar. Entertainment for all. Pool tables, karaoke, a DJ, and even a drag show. Watch the game with us and get some great food. Burgers, sushi, and much more. Don't wait for overtime. Head into the Fifth Quarter for a great time today.
Need a dentist? Call Dr. David Wright at 559-222-6213 or visit bitemedental.com.
Here at Central Valley Talk, we've chosen Select Business Systems to provide for our copy, print, and scanning needs. We used to think it was cheaper to purchase our own toner and maintain our own office equipment. But now, with the expertise and experience of Select Business Systems, our office workflow is running at peak performance, saving our company time and money. They've truly set us up with our new Sharp multifunction copier, streamlining our office with the press of a button. To find out how you can improve your office technology, call Select Business Systems at 446-0123 or visit their website at selectsharp.com.
This segment was brought to you by Pro Travel Network Fresno. For all your vacationing planning, call Jennifer Rogers at 559-317-6735.
Hi, Haven Young here again. Hey, join Mike Briggs and myself here at Central Valley Talk Studios, 1212 North Van Ness at Olive, the second and fourth Saturday at 2 p.m. That's August 13th and 27th. We're going to show you some more information on Moringa Oleifera and give away a 6-day trial pack. That's right. Show up and you might win a 6-day trial pack. And if you can't be here, go to our website, mostnutritiousPlant.com. Don't forget the hyphens. See you here.
CentralValleyTalk.com.
Welcome back to New Thought Talk. I am your host, Reverend Steve Walling from the Spiritual Awareness Center. Anyway, we're talking about God and our understanding, our belief in God, and our definitions of those beliefs. And I want to move forward with a couple things here. First is, there is universal mind, spirit, intelligence. That is the origin of everything. Now, this is a way that we can understand and define God. It is the first cause, and this is God. This universal life and energy finds an outlet in and through all that is energized and through everything that lives, including you and I, particularly you and I, particularly through our consciousness and our expression of life. There is one energy back of all that is energized. This energy is in everything. There is one spirit back of all expression. That is the meaning of that mystical saying, in him we live and move and have our being. Now think about that. An infinite God everywhere means that we exist within God, that God is not separate from us, that we experience, express, and that we are a manifestation of this thing that we call God. That there is within every individual that which partakes of the nature of this universal wholeness. And insofar as it operates, it is God within us. That is the meaning of the word Emmanuel, the meaning of the word Christ, or the Christ within us. There is that within us which partakes of the nature of this divine being, and since it partakes of the nature of the divine being, we are divine. We are a spiritual being. If you recall that there was there is a story in the Bible where Jesus talks to the woman at the well, and he says that God is spirit, and God must be worshipped in spirit. And we are all spiritual beings, and we are all that spiritual being represented and manifesting as us. And the liberating understanding of that, as we allow it to play out in our life, means that we are taking ourselves out of being dependent upon things physical. That we're not dependent upon something outside of ourselves for our happiness, our goodness, our abundance, but we recognize that everything that we need, want, desire, comes from that which is within us. And that which is within us is this divine principle. Until we awake to the fact that we are one in nature with God, we shall not find the way of life. Until we realize that our own word has the power of life, we shall not see clearly. And the Bible points out that man has the same power in his own life and in his own world that it claims for God. The Word was with God, and the Word was God, is an oft repeated but little understood statement. The promise to man is equally positive, that the word is nigh on thee, even in thine own mouth, thou shouldest know it and do it. If any word has power, it follows that all words have power. It means that every word which we hear, speak, think, has some power. Every word which we hear, think, speak, has some power. And each and every one of those words come from something behind them, and that something comes from thought. And each and every one of those thoughts finds its basis in our acceptive and our acceptiveness of it in our own internal belief system. I believe in a power and a presence for good in the universe that is available to each and every one of us at the level that we avail ourselves to it. I believe that it is there for each and every one of us to use. I believe that that power is within you right now as you watch this show, and that power never leaves you. Our job, your job, is to connect with that power which is found within you, to make that connection within yourself. And so we start with moving away from our old definition of God, that we are not tied to a God that holds us down, that there is not a singular one way, one path, if you will, to God, but that God, being everywhere present, has many ways that we can approach God. Now, the way that we approach God through New Thought is a collection, if you will, of many different ways that are put into this philosophy, but there's many other ways that someone can utilize. And if you are on your spiritual path and you are on your spiritual journey, don't think that you're going to be punished because you're not doing it in the way that someone else ascribes that you should be doing it. Because God being infinite love, cannot hold within itself something less than that infinite loveness. Can't happen. How can infinite love on any level hold even a fraction, an ounce, a milliounce of something other than love? It's infinite. It's good. It's there. It's for you. It's that ever-presence. And truth be told, don't you feel that sometimes? Haven't you experienced those times? Maybe you're out in nature, you look at this beautiful, vast night sky with all these stars, or even in the city, and you just sit there and you have a moment and you contemplate an incredibleness, and you feel overcome with this feeling. Where do you think that comes from? It comes from within. It doesn't come from the cars driving down the street or the buildings or the asphalt, and it doesn't come from the stars in the sky if you're out in nature. doesn't come from the trees in the forest or doesn't come from the waves in the ocean if you happen to be on the beach. It comes from that same place within each and every one of us, that place at the center of our being where God exists. That God is an infinite principle, an infiniteness of goodness, an infinite power, an infinite potential, and that God is open, available, and expressing through you and to you. And so, as I was sitting there yesterday and I was listening to these people, and my heart on many levels went out to them. I don't, like I say, I don't judge them. That's their belief. But I wonder how much more life could they experience? How much more good could they experience if they dropped their fear, if they just opened their hearts to an infinite loving presence? And that's what I'm asking you to consider today. Can you drop that fear? Can you open your heart to an infinite presence of love, of goodness that is available to you? Can you open your mind and open the inner beingness of who you are and consider that you are important, that you are powerful, that you are enough in every aspect of your life? That no matter what people may have told you, no matter what life has presented to you at this point in time, that you are greater than and better than anything that you've experienced to this point, no matter how wonderful your life's been. There's still more good, to quote my grandson, more better, that is available to you as you open yourself up to it. But you've got to actively make that choice. You have to actively seek it out. And that is part of our spiritual journey that we walk. You know, some people kind of fall into it, but most of us, we have to walk that journey. We have to, in consciousness, take those steps. But as we do that, as we begin to build that habit, as we begin to see that we are creative beings, as we begin to see that creativeness demonstrate in our lives, as we begin to see our spirituality, if you will, that as it manifests, our path becomes an easier path to follow, and our experience becomes a greater experience to experience, and our good becomes an ever greater, more wonderful good that we see play out in our lives. And you know, thing is, it plays out in our lives, but it plays out in the lives of people around us, and it plays out in the lives of the people around them. As we begin to take responsibility for our own individual life, as we begin to take responsibility for the good that we wish to experience, and then we see that good experienced and expressed in our lives, we begin to become the foundation, if you will, of a better world, a greater world. It's not about going out there and telling somebody that they have to believe the way that you believe. It's not about forcing someone to convert. It's not about winning an argument over things of a spiritual nature. It's about being that light in the world, because, you know, when light enters a space of darkness, there's not an argument. When life enters a space of darkness, there's not a discussion. Light just appears. And as your light, as you walk your path, as you begin to grow spiritually, as your light grows and shines ever brighter, it's not about you going in and convincing somebody else that they need to change. It's about you sharing your light, and that light just be a light of beingness. And you will see over a period of time that your world begins to change on a small level and then on a bigger level. And that is the power when we walk our spiritual path. That is the power when we define God as the goodness of all that is as it's expressed in our lives. That is an incredible power. But it's one that most of us, most of the time, aren't even aware that we have, aren't even aware that we can avail ourselves to, but it's there nonetheless. You know, when you take the time to make yourself important, when you take the time to do your daily spiritual practices of meditation and affirmation and study, you know, whether you go on the internet and you watch something like this, whether you are a member of a spiritual organization, be it a church, a center, a synagogue, it makes no difference. Wherever you're at, as you begin to walk your path and anticipate and work on your journey, you're making changes, and you don't have to give up a belief system, if you will, as you begin to watch this or walk this path. But as you do walk this path, you will find that your beliefs will change and evolve, that your understanding of God will shift away from a God out there somewhere to a God that is everywhere present, that is a God in here within us, within yourself, and that God is a loving God, and that God expresses as you. And when you watch people that experience life on that level, it's a pretty incredible experience, and that experience is available to you as you open yourself up to it. We often say that God is good, and that is true, but God is as good as you can imagine, and then that much more. And you are that good demonstrated as you at the level that you demonstrate. But you gotta step out. You gotta make that commitment. You've got to make that choice. And each and every one of us, we do and we don't. We set our own limitations, if you will. It says, do we desire to live in a world people with friends who love us, surrounded by things beautiful and pleasing? There's but one way, and this way is as certain as the sun shines. Daily. We must control all thought that denies the real. We must control all thought that denies the real. What are we saying when we say we must control all thought that denies the real? Well, if we say that God is love and God is good, then we also have to say that that is real, because God is all there is. So something that is not loving, something that is not good, is something that denies the real now, isn't it? So when we think of thoughts that are not necessarily loving thoughts, when we think of thoughts that are thoughts of limitation, when we think of thoughts of lack, those are thoughts that deny the real, if you will. We must affirm the divine presence within us. We must step out of God out there, and we must embrace God within. And as we embrace God within, we open ourselves up to demonstrating that good in our lives. Then, as the mist disappears before the sun, so shall adversity melt before the shining radiance of our exalted thought. That's a very poetic way for Holmes to describe that as we begin to refocus from a God out there, a God that is only available to limited people that only walk one path, to an infinite God that's everywhere present, that's available to each and every one of us, that as we open ourselves up to it, as we begin to embrace that, as we begin to put that into a belief and understanding and a demonstration in our life, that the mist that has clouded our sight, if you will, our seeing, that mist of limitation, that mist of lack, that mist of adversity begins to fall away, and in its place is goodness and abundance and this loving presence that we call God. And we watch this happen as we begin to grow. It's powerful. The prodigal son remained prodigal as long as he chose to do so. And this is that story that Jesus told about the prodigal son who stayed away as long as he chose to stay away. At some point, he made a different choice, didn't he? And when he chose to, he returned to his father's house and was greeted with outstretched hands. When we turn to the divine presence, there's not a "I told you so" waiting for you. There's not a list of things that you have to do, or chores that you have to do, or absolutions that you have to make in order to make yourself worthy in the presence of the divine. When you turn to God, God's arms are open to you now. God's good is available to you now. Whatever happened in the past is in the past. Now, you may have to make amends for things that you've done in life that you need to be held accountable for, but beyond that, there's nothing within God that you have to be held accountable for. In this moment, right here, right now, you can choose to make a change, and God is available to you to make that change, and that's the powerful understanding. So, when he chose to, he returned to his father's house and was greeted with outstretched hands. So shall our experience be when we return to the world which is perfect. When we return to the world which is perfect, a new heaven and earth awaits us. Act as though I am, he said, and I will be. The Spirit of truth will lead us into all good. This is the high road to the fulfillment of our lives. This is the high road to the fulfillment of our lives, our good, and our demonstration of a greater God in day-to-day life. This is what's available to us. There is then no limitation outside our own ignorance, and since we can all conceive of a greater good, then we have since we can all conceive of a greater good than we have so far experienced, we all have the ability to transcend previous experiences. If we can conceive this much better than what we've got, then we can experience that much better than what we have. And as we continue to do that, step by step, we move forward, we expand greater, and we move beyond ourselves. We rise triumphant above circumstances, but we shall never triumph over our circumstances while we persist in going through old mental reactions, while we persist in understanding that there is but one road to God, in to persist and to hold the belief that there is judgment in the world that awaits us, that there is evil in the world that can defeat us. Not that we don't experience things we call evil. It's true we do. But those things were created in the mind of man, and they are experienced in the physical life of man. They are neither spiritual nor are they godly. And they are things that we can learn to and we will transcend. And that's as we move beyond our old definitions of God and the limitations that have held for us. So we're going to take our final break, and when we come back, I'm going to talk about a few other things. I'll see you then.
Clovis Bicycle is located at Bullard, Minnewawa, and Clovis near Dollar General. Featuring kids' bikes, cruisers, road or mountain bikes, and now featuring a selection of recumbent bikes. Check them out at clovisbicycle.com or call 325-2453.
Hi, Haven Young here again. Hey, join Mike Briggs and myself here at Central Valley Talk Studios, 1212 North Van Ness at Olive, the second and fourth Saturday at 2 p.m. That's August 13th and 27th. We're going to show you some more information on Moringa oleifera and give away a 6-day trial pack. That's right. Show up and you might win a 6-day trial pack. And if you can't be here, go to our website, mostnutritiousPlant.com. Don't forget the hyphens. See you here.
Give your home and yard a facelift with Olivas Landscaping. Olivas Landscaping can make a tired yard look fresh again. Whether you need one-time or recurring service, repair, or a whole new design, contact Olivas Landscaping. Call Patrick Olivas at 273-0142.
Realtor Letty Pinjatori is a broker associate with Keller Williams, and she is also a voiceover artist. Contact Letty at 559-281-4568.
Need raisins? Call National Raisin Company at 559-834-5981 or online at nationalraisin.com.
CentralValleyTalk.com. CentralValleyTalk.com.
Welcome back, New Thought Talk. I am your host, the Reverend Steve Walling. So I hope you enjoyed what I shared with you earlier in the show today. And in this last segment, we're going to talk about a few things that are available to you as you walk your spiritual path, so to speak. Now, there are many different tools out there that are available. I'm going to share with you one that I do recommend to people, not because I'm the author of it, but because it is a very easy tool to use. There is a series of these books that I have had the honor to author, if you will, and there's one for each month. This one happens to be the January one, but they're, like I say, they're through the years, and so you can order. Well, we got October coming up here, but they're the New Thought, Wit, and Wisdom of Reverend Dr. Steve Walling, and what they are is they're in a book form. There is a daily quote that's on the left side, and I write a commentary on the right side for that. And you can read the quote, and you can read the commentary, and then at the top of the next page up here, there is an affirmation for the day that is a powerful affirmation that you can use. And then below that is a line space that you can journal your thoughts after you've done your meditation, thinking about what you've read, and you've meditated on it, and you've thought about applying it and utilizing it in your life. And this is a daily there's one for each day of the month. So, as you go through the month, it becomes a very powerful tool that you can use. And like I say, we've got one book out for each month. And Reverend Richard Lode was nice enough to put this together for me and offer it out there. Actually, it wasn't something I had thought of at the time, but I'm glad that he did, and I'm glad it's available to you. And there are other tools that you can use. If you choose not to purchase these books, you can do daily studies. There's NewThoughtLibrary.com online, and you go there and find daily readings and take that information and do basically the same thing. You can get yourself a copy of the Science of Mind book. We call it the textbook, and it's written by Dr. Ernest Holmes. Again, that's another powerful tool that you can use. And as I'm talking about these tools, what I'm talking about is things that you can use as you walk your spiritual philosophy, you walk your spiritual path. And that, more than anything else, becomes the most important factor, that daily you do this. You can join people at the various New Thought centers. We have the Spiritual Awareness Center, which is located here in Fresno, and I happen to be the senior minister of. We meet on Sundays. This Sunday will be our last meet at the, it's called the Fresno Soap Company. It's a theater in the Tower District, and then we'll be moving to our new permanent home. And I'll have more to talk about regarding that in an upcoming show. We've been evolving from Madera into the Fresno area, and it's been exciting. We've been growing. We're seeing new people show up, and we've had new people that have begun to participate in our spiritual program. So it's been very exciting for me. I've really enjoyed that. You can also go to our webpage, and this is something that it helps support our ministry. And in a sense, it also is a spiritual tool for you as you can support us. There is an energetic connection there. You go to MaderaSAC.com, and on our front page we have a link where you can donate to the center, and you can do this through PayPal. Makes it very easy. Or our address is there. You can always mail us your donations, and it does. It helps support this program. It supports our ministry, and one of the things that we often do at our center is we provide free books and literature for people that come, and it helps to cover that cost. And if you want, you can write me, and if you have something that you'd like to share, and I can always get you a autographed copy, if you will, of one of our books. And it's just I got to tell you, as I started out in my spiritual journey in New Thought, I didn't start out to be a minister. I didn't start out to be a teacher. I started out as a student, and I began to learn these tools and these practices, and I began to apply them in my life. And as I began to see the changes that took place in my life, and I began to watch these changes unfold in other people's life, it became very exciting to me. And somewhere along the line, I felt the call to share and to teach, which led to this show. It led to the books. It led to becoming a minister at the center. But most importantly, it led for me to have the ability to watch people put into practice these powerful tools and become just their lives change. It's incredible, from little bits to great bits, and people learning to be in the moment, if you will, learning to open themselves up, to be present to what's going on, learning to respond to life instead of reacting to life, and learning to allow God to express as God does in their life. It's been an amazing journey for me, and I thank you as you've watched these shows over the years that we've been on, and I look forward to presenting more in the future. But most importantly is you take these tools and you put them into practice in your life, that your life changes more importantly than anything else, because as you change in your life, the world is changing, and that's just the way it is. It's absolutely incredible. So my friends, as you go through your week this week, and as I always do, I'll close the show with, we call this the prayer of protection, and no, I didn't write it, but it's a powerful affirmation, and that is, may the light of God surround you, and the love of God enfold you, and the power of God protect you, and the presence of God watch over you, because truly, wherever you are, God is there, all is well. Have a great week. Look forward to seeing you again when we come back. Blessings, my friends. Take care.
CentralValleyTalk.com